Do you feel like you're stuck in meaningless pain? Like life froze on a chapter that shouldn't even exist? What if I told you that chapter was written on purpose? Amelia used to walk the streets of New York with eyes full of light. Everything about her radiated sensitivity. The strong yet gentle brushstrokes on her canvases, the colors she chose, the words she kept in silence. But now, it felt like the whole world had lost its color. The city was still the same, loud, alive, always rushing. But inside her, everything had stopped. Pain had disrupted the flow of life. And worse, it seemed like no one noticed. Her mother's death was like an invisible rupture. People saw Amelia walking, talking, paying bills. But inside she was gone. Her mother was the balance point, the bridge between chaos and calm. She used to tell her on the darkest days, even when it doesn't feel like it, God has already written the ending. That phrase kept echoing like a faint whisper, powerless now, as if it belonged to a time that no longer existed. She stopped painting. The canvases that once held her emotions like silent confidants now sat dusty in a corner of her studio. The paints dried up in their closed containers. And the days dragged on in constant gray. The world seemed indifferent to the weight she was carrying. Her friends tried to reach out. Some persisted for a while. Others slowly drifted away. She didn't blame them. How could they understand the hole torn open in her chest? It felt like she had been ripped out of herself. The only thing that got her out of bed was habit. But even breakfast didn't make sense anymore. Until one day, while trying to organize boxes of her mom's belongings, a task she'd been avoiding for weeks, she found something that made her stop. A small canvas, tucked behind a pile of books. An unfinished painting. The background was filled with soft blues and beiges, but the center was blank. In the lower corner, almost hidden, her mom had written in pencil, "Pain paints too." Hit Amelia like lightning. She sat on the floor, hugging the canvas like it was a piece of her soul. The phrase, so simple, carried enormous weight. Her mom always had this gift of turning chaos into beauty. Was this a message left on purpose? Or just a coincidence? Even without answers, something began to stir inside her. A new discomfort. As if a forgotten question had returned. What if this pain has something to say too? But Amelia didn't know what to do with that feeling. Instead of relief, she felt a knot in her chest. The canvas stared back at her. The phrase haunted her. Pain paints too. She didn't want pain to paint anything. She just wanted it to go away. In the days that followed, she tried to ignore it. She stored the canvas, closed the box, and promised not to look again. But every time she crossed the studio, it felt like she could hear her mom whispering, even when it doesn't feel like it. Then one cloudy morning, with no special reason, she walked to her front door and found something different. A plain beige envelope with no return address. Inside, a folded piece of paper. One sentence, handwritten in soft script. Pain paints too. Amelia's heart nearly stopped. It was the exact same phrase. Identical. But it wasn't on a canvas now, or echoing in her memory. It was real, concrete. Someone had left it there. But who? And why? She stared at the note for minutes. The phrase, though short, seemed to unlock windows inside her that had been shut for ages. Who had left it? How did they know? Why now? These questions looped in her mind like a scratched record. But there were no answers. Just that burning void, the presence of absence. The pain didn't leave. And the note, instead of comfort, brought restlessness. She tried to paint that day. Took a fresh canvas, like facing a blank page full of possibilities. But the brush felt too heavy in her hand. The colors that used to dance in her mind now felt lifeless. She spent minutes trying to find the first color, the first shape. But nothing made sense. She painted just to go through the motions, as if imitating something that once was hers. But now, everything was silent. And in that silence, a new form of expression was born. She started writing. Not long texts or confessions to the world. Just letters. All addressed to her mother. All kept It was like talking to her was the only way to make sense of her own thoughts. Sometimes she wrote with anger, sometimes with longing, sometimes with guilt. Why did you leave me so soon? Why wasn't I ready? What if I disappointed you? The letters became a refuge, even without answers. Maybe because deep down she wasn't looking for answers. She just didn't want to forget. One sleepless night, she wrote a sentence with trembling hands. If this pain is pointless, why does it stay? That was the question that crushed her the most. Because if all of it was in vain, if nothing would change, then why did pain still visit her every day like a loyal shadow? That same night she had a dream. It was like being in another time, another space. She saw her mother from behind, standing in front of a large canvas. She painted with soft, almost floating movements. Amelia couldn't see her face, but recognized the shape of her shoulders, the way she held the brush. She tried to call her, but no sound came out. And then, without turning, her mother said tenderly, "You're in pain, daughter, but God already wrote the ending." Amelia woke up startled, her heart pounding like a drum. Tears ran freely, mixed with fear and longing. Was it real? Just her imagination? Or something more? She didn't know. And maybe she didn't need to. But that dream stirred something in her. Like pain had deeper roots. Like it wasn't punishment, but an invitation. In the days that followed, she started walking more. She visited places she used to go with her mom, as if searching for a missing piece. She walked without rush, watched the sky between buildings, listened more closely to the sounds of the streets. Everything seemed the same, but different, like the world was still mourning with her. One of those places was a small coffee shop, tucked between two old buildings. It's where they met after painting classes. Her mom would order hibiscus tea, Amelia hot chocolate. They didn't talk much, but they said everything. When she walked in again, the smell of cinnamon and coffee embraced her. She sat at the same table by the window. She didn't order anything, just sat there, feeling the invisible presence of someone who wasn't there anymore. The waiter, a quiet and kind guy, came over with a napkin in hand. He recognized her and simply said, "Someone asked me to give you this if you ever came back." It was a folded napkin. Inside, a drawing, delicate, handmade. A sunflower sketched with fine lines, just like the ones her mom used to draw in notebook margins. In the bottom corner, a single letter, A. She froze. The world around her slowed down. Her heart pounded in her hands. The letter A. The sunflower. The memory. But who was A? And how did they know she'd come back? That letter wouldn't leave Amelia's mind. She tried to think of friends, classmates, relatives. But nothing made sense. And the sunflower, with her mom's same soft stroke, felt more like a sign than coincidence. Like the whole universe was trying to tell her something, but gently, like a whisper between heartbeats. She still didn't get the why. But for the first time, she felt maybe she didn't need to understand everything right now. In the following days, something shifted. It wasn't a grand turn or sudden revelation. It was more like a breeze slipping through a window crack on a stifling day. Subtle but noticeable. Amelia started to believe that maybe pain wasn't the end of the story, but a comma, turning point. Like the ground where she bled might someday become fertile. One day, during a random walk, she stopped in front of a small park she used to visit with her mom. She sat on a weathered wooden bench, watching the dry tree branches, the perched birds, life continuing even after winter's losses. An older woman approached slowly, with white hair and a steady gaze. She sat beside Amelia without asking, as if the meeting had already been scheduled by something unseen. After a few minutes of shared silence, she turned to Amelia and softly said, "What's hurting you now? Maybe it's God planting you somewhere new." Amelia turned, stunned. But the woman was already getting up, smiling gently before walking away. No explanation, no goodbye. Just that phrase, like it had been delivered straight from heaven. She went home with those words echoing in her mind. She sat with a notebook in her lap and, for the first time, wrote without pain, without screaming, without guilt. She just wrote, "What if this pain is a seed?" That was the day she chose to paint again. But not to impress or to escape. To understand. To let her soul speak. She picked a big canvas, used colors she once avoided, and started painting a tree. But it wasn't perfect. It had a crack down the middle, broken branches, exposed roots. Still it grew. From the wounded trunk, small leaves sprouted. From the scar, life bloomed. When she finished, it felt like she'd taken a deep breath for the first time in months. The pain was still there, but something had changed. Now it wasn't just heavy. It had meaning. From then on, her paintings changed. They were rawer, more honest. They held the marks of pain, but also the beauty of survival. Elements of rebuilding started to show, blooming among ruins. And people could feel it. It was like each piece whispered, "You'll bloom too." Unexpectedly, she got an email from a small independent gallery. They'd found her work through an artist network and wanted to invite her to exhibit. The theme: visible scars. Art that spoke of pain, loss, and transformation. She read the message over and over in silence until it sank in. It wasn't a prank. It was a calling. Preparing for the exhibition was quiet and intense. Each canvas felt like a page from a secret diary, now open to the world. Amelia didn't know if people would get it. But that didn't matter anymore. She was saying what needed to be said. On opening night, the space was filled with unfamiliar faces. Some paused for seconds, others stayed long minutes in front of the artwork. She wasn't focused on praise. She just wanted to see the impact. To feel if someone, in silence, saw themselves in the images too. Near the end of the night, she approached the easel where the broken tree painting stood. And there, clipped to it, was a white envelope. No sender. Just her name handwritten. She opened it carefully. Inside, a folded sheet with one sentence. "Pain is the place where God wrote my mission. And maybe yours too." Amelia froze. Her heart raced like that first time. The gallery remained full, but in that moment, everything inside her went quiet. Who was behind these messages? And more importantly, how did they know exactly what she needed to hear? Amelia held the note with trembling hands. The words still echoed. "Pain is the place where God wrote my mission. And maybe yours too." There was something sacred in that message. Not because of the paper or a missing signature, but because of what it awakened in her. For the first time, she felt she was on the right path, even without knowing exactly where it led. It was like walking down a dark hallway with a lit match. She couldn't see the end yet, but she knew she had to keep going. The exhibition ended. The lights were turned off. People left. But something inside her stayed lit. Amelia walked the streets back home like someone carrying something new in her heart. She wasn't running from pain anymore. She was trying to understand it. She stopped treating it as an enemy and started listening to it. Sometimes in silence, sometimes on the canvas, sometimes in the middle of the street, in her thoughts. It was like she had finally understood. Pain speaks too. And sometimes it's the most honest voice we have. In the following days, something settled inside her. Not like someone who solves everything, but like someone who accepts that some questions will stay unanswered for a while, and that's okay. She wrote in her notebook like she did in her deepest moments. She wasn't a victim of pain anymore. She was a survivor full of purpose. Shortly after, she got an email from a woman named Claire. She had been at the exhibition. Said she came in by chance, waiting for the rain to stop. That she didn't really know why she stayed so long in front of the broken tree painting. But that day, she had come with the intention of ending her own story. She couldn't see meaning anymore. Couldn't bear the weight. But in that painting, she saw something no one else had shown her. It wasn't just pain. It was pain that breathed. Pain that healed. And that saved her hope. Amelia cried reading those words. Not tears of sadness, but of meaning. She realized something that had never crossed her mind. Her pain became a bridge for someone else. And in that moment, Everything she went through didn't feel in vain anymore. That's when a new mission was born. She started visiting shelters, hospitals, small clinics. She brought some of her paintings and with them gentle words. No speeches, no promises of healing. Just sitting, listening, sometimes hugging. And when she could, she left small handwritten notes, like seeds scattered on the wind. If it still hurts, God is still writing. You're not the end of the story. You're the page turning. A scar is where life won. She didn't sign the notes, just left them on pillows in cafeterias between books and windows. Then quietly walked away. Her role now wasn't to explain pain, but to remind people it didn't have to be the final word. During one of these visits, she went to a support center for kids undergoing cancer treatment. She brought a small canvas with simple strokes, a dark sky with golden dots, like stars being born in the shadows. She hung it on a hallway wall, then sat on a bench in the garden, just watching life go by. That's when she felt a presence beside her. It was a little girl, maybe 8 years old. She wore a colorful headscarf and had a smile much bigger than her tiny body. The girl stayed quiet for a few seconds, then looked at Amelia with a piercing gaze. "You sound like my mom when you talk," the girl said. She used to say God writes beautifully, even in the dark. Amelia was speechless. The phrase pierced her soul like a perfect arrow. That wasn't just coincidence. It was confirmation. Like the heavens had answered through a child's voice. She smiled, eyes full of tears. Tried to hold them back, but couldn't. In that moment, Amelia knew for sure. She was exactly where she needed to be. The road back wasn't long, but it was heavy with memories. Amelia returned to the old house where she once lived with her mom, the place she avoided for so long, as if absence lived there. But now it was different. What once was raw pain had turned into fertile ground. The house still smelled like the flowers her mom grew on. The balcony, the distant creak of old wood underfoot. But something had changed. And that change wasn't in the house. It was in who lived there now. With care, Amelia transformed the rooms into creative spaces. A living studio where every wall carried a story, every canvas a healed scar. It wasn't a formal gallery, and didn't need to be. It was an open space where beauty wasn't in perfection, but in truth. People came in with tears and left with hope. It was a place where the invisible had a script, where pain was welcome, not as a permanent guest, but as someone who had already done what they needed to do. Above the entrance, she hung a special piece. Not an elaborate painting, but a simple phrase, handwritten in her mom's soft script. God already wrote the ending. It was a reminder and a promise. A stake of faith planted at the very start of every visit. One morning, alone in the studio, Amelia sat at the wooden table where her mom used to sew old cloths and tell stories that felt like parables. She picked up a new notebook, took a deep breath, and began to write. But this time, it wasn't a letter to her mom. It was to herself. A letter of reconciliation, of gratitude, of a new beginning. Amelia, you cried a lot. You tried to understand everything. You fought your feelings. But look where you are. You weren't destroyed. You were rebuilt. You're in the pain. But heaven already wrote the healing page. And now it's time to live. Not without scars, but with new roots. She closed the notebook firmly and smiled. It was the end of one cycle, and the beginning of another. Outside, the sky was partly cloudy. One of those days when the sun plays hide and seek. Amelia looked up and remembered the metaphor her mom used on tough nights. Sometimes God turns off the light, not to lose us, but to write more clearly. And maybe that was it. In the dark, divine strokes come to life. Because in silence, the deepest words are written. She stayed there for a few minutes, just watching the sky, with a calm smile of someone who doesn't have all the answers, but has learned to trust the author of the story. And if you made it this far, maybe something inside you is under construction too. Maybe your pain hasn't become a bridge yet, but it will. 'Cause if everything feels meaningless right now, just breathe. God already wrote the ending, and He knows exactly what He's doing. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the Living Hope channel. Share it with someone going through pain. And remember, what feels like the end today might just be the place where God starts writing the best chapter of your life.